Support marches are powerful because they have buffs and effects that don't care about the level of your technology and your research, which means that even as a low spender or free-to-play player, these pairings and commanders will give you some serious value. So stick around in this video for my top 4 support pairs. Hello, my friends, and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, a sponsored content creator for Rise of Kingdoms, and today we're talking about the top 4 support pairs, which actually was far more complex for me to make than my other tier list that we've done this past week for infantry, cavalry, and archers. So in this video, whether you're a free-to-play player or a big spender, we're going to talk about some of the pairs that we think are the very best. You like Rise of Kingdoms guides that help you get value and smash your enemies, then hey, consider smashing that subscribe button for daily Rise of Kingdoms videos. The format of this video will be as follows, and as a reminder, please do use the timestamps in the description to jump to whatever portion of the video you'd like. We're going to talk first about what it means to be a support march, which might sound a little bit weird, but we need to differentiate between debuffing and buffing. Then we're going to talk about the kind of player you are, because it's going to influence which of these pairs you'd actually be interested in. Then we'll get into the honorable mentions. From there, we'll go and we'll talk about the top 4, as well as some talents for each of them. So let's start by differentiating between a march that is debuffing and a march that is being supportive. Because although Ethelfled technically helps you beat your enemies faster, right? Her debuff here is giving you a solid 30% health, attack, defense reduction to many enemies. This list is going to be focused on the commanders that elevate another commander near you. So to give an example of that, Constantine is elevating other commanders near him by virtue of making them take less damage. Joan of Arc, great example of a commander that is elevating the other marches nearby. So when we say a support march, that's what we mean. In addition, we really do have to differentiate what kind of player you are. There is a huge difference between what a free-to-play player is going to be looking at for bringing to the field in a supportive march and what commanders that they would evaluate versus someone who is a big spender versus someone who is a mega whale. And I think this was best exemplified for me in a chat I was in recently with a bunch of really powerful players, and I wish I remembered this player's name to give them credit, but we were talking about the virtues of different marches, and they jumped in and they said, or you could be a real whale and just clear the field. And I thought, you know, there's merit to that. The idea that if you're a really high-power player in this game, you don't care about positive trades. You just go wreck everybody before your marches get completely obliterated. So in this list, we're focusing not on that group, but more when we say support, right? For that group, support is like Artemisia Tamaris, and the debuff that is increasing skill damage taken by a target. That qualifies as support, okay? What we're talking about is for players that are bringing 1 or 2 marches, trying to be a team player, or a march that would support your murder ball. You're bringing 5, and this would actually be something you could bring that is still a threat, and it is still supportive. It's not just there necessarily to offer a bunch of buffs, although 1 or 2 of these pairs do that, and they're just so good at doing that, it's worth it. One last concept that I really struggled with when making this video was trying to understand what's actually better. Are you better off as a low power player bringing Constantine Joan, which I feel like in many ways makes you a target? People see Joan, they want to take it out. Or are you better bringing something else that makes you less of a target? Because the reality is that Constantine Joan is very tanky. It's bad for people to focus it, but people focus it anyways because, well, they see a Joan and they're used to seeing that that player probably has maybe lower power, and so they'll be squishy, so they try to take them out. But for me, a best case scenario, if I bring Constantine Joan, is that you go target my Constantine Joan while all my extremely high damage marches do work on you, man. Do work. The best thing you can do for me is to let my tank march tank. So I just wanted to mention that as an idea I also struggled with in this video. Do I want to recommend that a free-to-play or low spender brings a Constantine Joan? Because, yeah, it's really tanky. It's really good at buffing nearby marches. It does literally sort of everything I would want, except it does in some ways make you a target, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. So with all of those sort of disclaimers and considerations out of the way, Let's get into the honorable mentions, and there are many. In fact, a part of the reason this video was just so hard to make is that when we look at commanders that are actually supportive, there are tons, and you can actually swap them out in some cases where it's like, oh man, instead of using, for instance, Joan of Arc, maybe you could swap in a Mulan. And honestly, the combination would still be about as good. There's sort of pros and cons to that, virtues to each. So to give a few examples of marches that are like that are very strong honorable mentions, would be pairings like, for instance, Richard or Martel paired with Joan of Arc, right? Like these are very classic, solid, open field pairs. Richard the First with Joan is great. It's very sustainable. It lasts on the field for a long time. People don't want to target Richard the First, so you can run around buffing with your Joan of Arc. People want to avoid you. He's also doing some great debuffs. I think this is a fantastic combination to use in the field. It's not top 4, but it's great material, which is why it's on the honorable mentions, and is a good example of a march where, like, yeah, you swap out the Joan of Arc, swap in Mulan, and it still is basically the exact same recommendation. Really good in the field, really solid. Makes the honorable mentions, not my top list, but is very strong. In addition, I wanted to mention this pair, even though I don't think most people should use it, but it's very good, which is Constantine with Alex. This is a supportive march because not only is it giving you a damage taken reduction, not only is it reducing the attack of enemy troops, but it also is giving those Alexander the Great shields, which is really quite nice. In addition, he's of course doing some really crucial debuffs, so it's a blend of tankiness and offensive punch. But the reason I can't recommend this combo is that probably you should be splitting these two up and making 2 separate marches, quite frankly. So depending on what you're doing with your collection, and most people wouldn't have steered their collection in the direction of saying, actually, I'm going to use a 5-5-1-1 Constantine with Alexander the Great. You could, and I think it'd be good. But for most people, I can't recommend that pair because you probably should be splitting the two and, for instance, do Alexander the Great Sun Tzu and Constantine Joan, just as an example. This makes the honorable mentions, not the top 4. One other supporting march that is really strong, and I would advocate for highly, but doesn't make the top list, is Ethelflaed with Joan of Arc, or I suppose with Mulan. The two pair together extremely well. Extremely well. The Ethelflaed is giving a lot of tankiness in the form of her talents, and also a little bit with her skills, reducing the counterattack damage that you take. But she's also going to do a lot of damage. So the pairing is actually a really serious threat, to the point that you will get focused out really quickly. The Ethel Joan or Ethel Mulan, that's the biggest problem with it. People know they have to deal with it, because actually it is a serious threat with those debuffs. It is relatively weak compared to some of these other combos that I'm going to recommend for its tankiness. And so it is going to get focused down. But it's a combination I myself have used in KVKs to be supportive. And if I don't use up all my cards in this video, I'll actually have a card up in the top where you can see me using this commander and this combo in the field to be a supportive player. Starting with number 4 on our top support march list is going to be a surprise to you. Many people are not using this combination, and it's extremely good and underrated. And that combination is going to be Saladin primary with either Joan or Mulan secondary. The reason this combo is so strong is that Saladin is very tanky. We've talked about this a lot recently in a number of videos. He reduces the skill damage you take, both from talents and skills, a grand total of more than 50% when you combine those together. He reduces the counterattack damage you take, which is a big deal. If you're not being focused, you're going to live for a really long time. So this pair is really great, not only for its sustain, there's also really good utility, reducing the healing effectiveness of the target, also going in and reducing their march speed is exceptional. So you've got the tankiness you need to actually survive in the field with this combo, combined with really great buffs, and that's what makes it exceptional. But the other thing I'll add for players that are lower spend or newer to the game and haven't teched up a whole heck of a lot is that also there are talents that help you get away from combat when things go sideways. That won't matter as much for Ark of Osiris, but in the field, this is a big deal for saving your march from taking the worst part of the negative trades, which is when you get really, really low. So that talent is, of course, Charge, giving you 30% extra march speed when you're below 50% health. And I'll just add that if you are using Joan of Arc as the secondary instead of Mulan, and most people will, by the way, because I don't think you should use your gold sculptures on a commander like Mulan unless you're a big spender or whale and you know what you're doing. For the most part, you shouldn't use your gold sculptures on gold key commanders. So with that said, if you are using Joan of Arc, I would take these points right over here in Conquering and consider swapping them in to this branch over here, improving your healing effectiveness and also increasing your damage after you get a heal, because Joan of Arc does a little bit of healing. But honestly, the difference between those two builds is really quite incremental. The number 3 pair that we have for you today on our list is going to be a Constantine primary, naturally. The dude is amazing, with either Joan or Mulan. I mean, we honestly we really couldn't have a top support list without mentioning Constantine Joan, which is basically mandatory right now in Canyon. Every team, literally every team that is top tier in Canyon is going to use Constantine Joan. It is, well, okay, Negan's always doing his own thing, but it is basically the truth. And you can see, by the way, Ethel Joan, really solid support pair as well. We cruise through the rest of this list. Negan, just trying to be contrary here as I'm trying to make a point. Everybody is using, wait, or no, good for you. Good for you. No Joan of Arc. Well played. So there are exceptions, but most people are using it. And the reason I include this in the list is in part because it's so easy for everybody to get, but also because it's so freaking powerful. Yeah, Constantine Joan is astonishingly tanky. Astonishing. It is shocking how tanky that combination is. Joan of Arc has a little bit of healing. She is boosting the normal attack damage, which increases the damage you deal to the thing you're targeting and to everyone who's targeting you. She also is improving infantry health. It's just shocking how good this combination is, not to mention the rage gen. It's a phenomenal combination. And the Mulan is also really quite good when paired with Constantine. Either one of those pairs is really solid to bring to an arc middle brawl. If they target your Constantine, then good news, you're tanking. And that march is designed to tank. If they don't target it, then you're enabling 4 other marches near you, in addition to your own, to be more awesome. It's doing everything I'm looking for in a support march, with the exception perhaps of more damage. For me personally, I'm kind of all about that more damage. But let's get into the next pair on the topic of more damage, and then I'll show you a Constantine build, because the number 2 pair still uses Constantine. We're still using Constantine, but the secondary this time is going to be Trajan. Why am I hyped about a Trajan secondary to a Constantine primary? And the reason for that, I forgot, on this account I don't yet have Trajan here. The reason that I am excited about Trajan is that he is actually going to do some damage. He is going to literally make the target take more damage if you bring mixed troops, and you can certainly do that with a Constantine. In addition, he is going to be buffing skill damage and generate rage for nearby marches. So while buffing stats like defense and health, which are things that Joan of Arc is going to do and Mulan is going to do, those are nice. I like the all-in offense that Trajan offers here. The skill damage boost here is huge. And Constantine is so tanky. Constantine is so tanky that for most people, like, yeah, if they attack into that, fine. Trajan's tanky, Constantine's tanky. So you've got a march that is very tough to deal with. It's offering some huge buffs. And I feel like overall, Trajan's kit is just a tier above what Joan of Arc is offering. That's not to say that her buff, when isolated out and looked at, isn't potentially better in some ways. I mean, look, the 4-second duration alone, rather than the 3-second duration, is meaningful. But when we evaluate them as a pair, I think you're going to just be better off. It's a more punchy combo to use that Constantine Trajan. And it's something I myself will be looking at specifically to replace in Canyon. And I will say, if Erno can go into Canyon and replace Joan of Arc, I mean, geez, he's placing well. You swap out that Martel for a Trajan who's still tanky enough, man. He's still tanky enough. He's got a ton of defense, ton of health. The fight's going to last a really long time. The defense stacks are going to go up. I think that we could see Trajan replace Joan in Canyon. It's entirely possible, but that's something that's going to take a really, really long time to see how that evolves fully. As far as the talents go for an open field Constantine, here is what I would recommend. And I am strongly advocating that you get the March speed from Fleet of Foot up over here. You do not have any baked in March speed with these Constantine combos. And okay, so the Trajan gives you like 10% March speed, but you definitely need the March speed, even though it's not exactly as efficient as other points that gives March speed. It just doesn't matter. 3 points, 6%. It's really great. The rest of this build is quite frankly, very cookie cutter. It's all in on the infantry tree, which is just an easy choice to go and make. It goes and it gets Rejuvenate, because obviously you have to get Rejuvenate. And then it picks up the skill damage taken reduction. Quite easy choices here. P.S. As I edit this video, I realized there is one thing I wanted to mention in addition, which is that I will be looking at a Trajan primary rather than a Constantine primary. It's going to depend on whether or not I prefer the talents, and I feel like that's working out better for me to have him as the primary. There are some downsides to having the mixed troops with a Constantine primary. You lose out on some of the infantry boosts that you would normally be getting for the March speed, also for the damage that you would take. And Trajan doesn't have that problem at all. He also isn't going to give you as many stats on infantry, because if you use him as the primary, you're looking at the leadership tree instead. That comes with some benefits, but I'm not yet sure which will actually be the better primary, and the support tree is the same on both of them. So pros and cons to that, but I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that in the video, and certainly I'll let you know once I figure out between the two of these which is really the better primary. Let's go, however, to the #1 support March in Rise of Kingdoms, and I am going to be honest. This March, in my estimation, is like a tier above every single March we've covered so far. Literally a tier above. Why is that? Well, I guess I should reveal the combo, and you'll see. The #1 pair for supporting is Saladin with William. This pair of Saladin and William is astonishingly effective. Not only is it offering a huge buff when you land area of effect damage, which is always going to happen in big fights, even though I know his area of effect damage is it's a small area, it is definitely good enough to hit multiple targets. You're going to give everybody 20% defense and 50 rage per second. But not only that, the combination is a must-answer threat. Saladin and William are doing enough damage that you can't just let them work on you. Like, you have to go and deal with Saladin and William. They're not a high enough priority kill target over other things that it makes you this, like, target that people are going to go way, way out of their way to deal with, which is perfect if you're only bringing a couple of marches. I, long ago, said that William might be one of the most important free-to-play commanders, because not only is his buff amazing, but when you pair with the Saladin William, it's phenomenal in the field. The Saladin tankiness and talents that let you get away from combat when you're in trouble is perfect for players that are more likely to get focused, and for support marches in general. Also, the other thing I really like about this combo, and someone pointed out to me in the comments of a video, and I was like, actually, we need to talk about this. This needs to be talked about, is that you could make this combo and go with a 5-5-5-1 Saladin. So you'll have slightly less March speed reduction, slightly less damage, slightly less healing reduction, and believe me, you will notice the difference when you go and expertise them. But the expertise skill here, from a 5-5-5-1, to take that to expertise, it's a solid 310 sculptures. The last 4 skill ups are 75, 75, 80, and 80. It's extremely expensive. What you could do instead of going and having your expertise Saladin and not having the William will be to say, hey, I'm going to go for Saladin William, but I'm going to start by going with that 5-5-5-1 on both of them. And the thing about William, when you look at his 4th skill, is that it's only gaining a 10% defense boost when you go and you max it. That's not much, to be perfectly honest. It's nice. It's meaningful. It's double the defense of what you were getting. But 5 talent points and 310 sculptures for 10% defense boost over here and a little bit of extra damage and attack over here on the expertise skill. I'm not saying you shouldn't expertise him. I think you should. I'm saying that it would be very reasonable and extremely low sculpture extremely low sculpture to go 5-5-5-1 with Saladin and William, and that is still, in my estimation, on your way to the very best support march in the game. Now, I'll be perfectly honest and say that there are things I certainly could have missed in this video. As an example, I'll just point out that I didn't include Moctezuma as a support march, because although he's doing a debuff that makes it so that you take less counterattack damage, I don't really think we would classify him as a support commander. He actually does a lot of damage, a shocking amount of damage. But that we've covered in a separate video, all of a card up in the top. Let me know down below again if there are any combos that we should have been looking at, but we missed. Also, do me a huge favor, throw a like on here if you enjoyed this video, and consider subscribing for daily Rise of Kingdoms videos. The top 4 lists we've been doing over the last 3 days have been extremely popular. So I'll have a card up in the top for the playlist that those are in. Check out that playlist. You might enjoy it. And until next time, you have fun smashing the kingdom.